Boom shakalaka, ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters around the world. It is your boy Chris Shule, aka the Esoteric Noetic, aka the Chocolate Nubian Soul Brother. And boy, I could not wait to make this video about Nick Cannon. I heard about what happened to Nick Cannon just the other day, that he made some racist comments on his podcast. I've heard some people speaking about it, but I haven't actually been able to hear, well, I hadn't been able to hear the actual comments on his podcast until just recently, just a few hours ago. And I'm like, whoa, this is worse than I thought. And I feel horrible saying this because I was initially kind of frustrated, pissed off the fact that people actually had the gall to say this kind of stuff. Black people, white people, doesn't matter. The fact that people just openly speak about things like this and they think it's acceptable, but it just became really funny when I finally listened to the podcast and listened to just the casual nature in which he dropped this information. And it's something that strikes a chord with me because it's something that I'm very familiar with. I've heard other brothers make comments like this, and it always frustrates me. And I think to myself, bro, have you been drinking the crazy juice lately? And there's something really refreshing about being able to speak about things that run contrary to what you were supposed to say. People do this thing where if they're part of a group, they will never speak out against that group. And I think it's a test to show your integrity and logical consistency when you can speak about something that runs contrary to your interests. I mean, a lot of people in the black community don't like to call people out if they're doing something that is gross or is unacceptable because it's like they're black, they're part of the group. But fortunately for me, I don't do this group thing. I don't do this, oh, you're in my team, you're black, therefore you're part of my group. You're in Camp Liberty, you're in Camp Vegan, you're in Camp Man, or you're in Camp, my football team. I don't do any of that kind of stuff. Granted, I don't want to bite the hand that feeds me. Don't get this twisted, I'm saying, but I do feel obliged to speak about the truth. If I'm going to call something out, I'm going to call something out with impartiality. And this black race thing is something that I make no exception for when I speak about the truth. And there's nothing more frustrating to me when people use this black card in order to spew out the most racist rhetoric. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, let's get into this. Let's hear what Nick Cannon had to say on his podcast in regards to white people and Semitic people.
Then let's go to what it really is then. When we talk about the power of melanated people,
I love that we talk about the power of melanated people. Even that phrase alone, I mean, if you flip this around and you had a white guy speaking like this, I love how black people talk about being black with pride. It's fun to me because I know that if it was ever reversed and a white man decided to speak, like have you ever heard of a white man, like one of your classic redneck talking like that? Well, I got to tell you, I'm just proud about my white people. White people are the greatest people in the world. I mean, I don't have anything against black people, but I'm telling you something right now. White power is a powerful, beautiful thing. If you heard something like that, well, most black people would lose their freaking mind. I just love the double standard about how black people are able to speak with pride. And granted, I know we do this thing where, because black people have been oppressed, we give them extra leeway in being able to speak like that, but it is a double standard, right? And it's a kind of a silly double standard because whereas we kind of have the similar exception with women, for instance, versus men. When it comes to, for instance, if a man was to hit a woman, it's never acceptable. Women would be losing their mind. Oh my! Nobody ever hit me like that. You hit me, I'm gonna kill you right now. However, if a woman was to hit a man, it would be like, If I told one of my friends that this girl hit me, they'd be like, that's not right. It's not cool. However, in reverse, you get the idea. But I think we have the double standard there because typically speaking, men, and I know this is going to offend a lot of women, men are typically stronger than women. And it's the power dynamic along the lines of, I think subconsciously we understand that if a man was to hit a woman, it would be considered to be far more severe. Just like if a 4-year-old kid was to hit a guy, that wouldn't be a big deal. But in reverse, you get the idea. But in regards to this racial thing here, we go under the assumption that black people have been oppressed. But it's a very airy fear. It's built of air and imagination, this idea that in the 21st century, black people are oppressed, because you have a look at some of the most powerful people, like Oprah Winfrey, people in the entertainment industry. Nick Cannon, for instance, and he's a superstar in the entertainment industry, and it's like black people. I'd make the argument they have probably more privilege in the entertainment industry because they're so successful. So it's definitely not one-sided. However, we still have this idea that, well, they're the minority, and because they've been oppressed historically, that they get this black card. They're able to speak about themselves as being superior. Anyway, let's get through this.
We talk about who we really are as guys, and
Right.
understanding that our melanin is so powerful, and it connects us in a way that the reason why they fear black, the reason why they fear is because the lack that they have of it.
Melanin is soul power, and the reason that they fear black is because of their lack of having this soul power. Nick Cannon is a racist. There is no getting around this. And I know a lot of people, a lot of black people particularly like to make this, oh, no, you just don't get it. You a coon. No, I'm logically consistent, and I don't do double standards, you see. I'm from Ghana, West Africa. None of this American stuff. I fully understand the history of the United States, black history, but I also understand the history of the human race. Not just black people, white people. I understand the double standards that people like to play, that, black people are more oppressed, but the reality of the situation is black people in history were just as oppressive towards white people. The North Africans ruled the Slavic people for a very long period of time. But this idea that black people cannot be racist, if you want to call me up on that, is absolutely ridiculous. That right there, to me, is the epitome of racism. This idea that, well, black, and this is a common theme, and I speak about this quite a lot because this is something a lot of black, well, at least some black people like to say openly. These people that follow, I don't know, like I've heard Polite making arguments like this. This figure in the black community, Hotep, apparently likes to make this argument. Mr. Farrakhan likes to make this argument about the melanation of black people, the fact that we are supreme beings because we have the energy of the sun permeating our beings. We can absorb the sunlight. Whereas the white man? The white man, they cannot take the energy of the sun. It's not supposed to be under these heavenly skies because they cannot take the sunlight. They have not been melanated. Therefore, they are not soulful people. Praise the black man. This is a lot of the nonsense that you often hear within the black community. And I love the fact that, I can call Nick Cannon out on this nonsense. Because no doubt, he believes this shit. And this is the thing. If Nick was just saying this stuff, it was as a joke, was lighthearted, I wouldn't even give it I wouldn't care. I'd be like, bro, this is fascinating. But I assure you, Nick Cannon believes what he's saying. He believes what he's saying because he didn't want to recant. When he made these statements initially, didn't want to recant, didn't want to apologize. Then, of course, he had to because he realized he was going to lose his business, and he ended up getting fired by Viacom, I think it was. And he's been with this under this corporation for a long time. He was the main guy for Nickelodeon, I think it was. He used to do this channel back in the day, but he's been with Viacom for a long time, and apparently because of the comments that he's been making just recently, he got fired. He got his ass fired because you can't make these kind of comments, particularly when you're making comments about people that control you, particularly when you're making anti-Semitic comments. But anyway, let's get into this stuff.
See what Dr. Francis C. Welsing talked about is that fear and that
just genetic annihilation,
that deficiency of when you have a person that has the lack of pigment, the lack of melanin, that they know that they will be annihilated. So therefore, however they got the power, they have the lack of compassion. That melanin comes with compassion. Melanin comes.
You preach. The reason I'm nodding my head, people, is not because I agree with what Nick is saying. It's because I'm so familiar with this argument, and make no mistake about it, it is inherently racist. It is the idea that it's not this racism that you hear. I've only really ever heard real racism, believe it or not, like the kind of racism that I call real racism, from when I see it indirectly on TV from the Ku Klux Klan. I've never met members like this, and two, from other black people. I mean, don't get me wrong. I've been called nigger. I've been called black shit. by plenty of white people as a kid. But to me, that's more often than not, that's the kind of stuff that people say when they're really angry, they're frustrated at you. For instance, if someone was being really mean to me and was beating me up, I'd find the worst thing I could say about them. You know, if they were whatever it was, if they were black, I'd call them. Obviously, that wouldn't work. But the point is, people say things sometimes out of frustration, anger, and I get that. Or they prejudge you. They have ideas about who you're going to be, that you're a thug, you're a threat. That's very low kind of racism. When someone thinks that you're inherently a bad person because of your genetic makeup, because of the color of your skin, that is the core of racism. At least that's how I'm defining it. Nick absolutely supports this idea, and I've heard a lot of people make this justification that, oh, look, I don't hate. Man, you know, I don't hate white people. I just understand that we're different. You know, they don't have the melanation. They don't have soul power, yo. Therefore, because of their environment, because of their ancestry, they've had to like behave like animals. They are essentially akin to the animal. We're all animals. We're all God's creations, but the white man is closer to the animal kingdom than he is to the melanation of the light of God. It's complete nonsense. But more importantly, it's inherently gross in that it represents this idea that you are superior just because of your genetic makeup. And the scientific evidence, the historical evidence to support that is a big goose egg. And look, I know a lot of people get frustrated, a lot of the black brothers that hear this and they say, oh, no, I don't hate white people. I just understand they're different. But you have to understand, you got to own this stuff, that idea by definition is what is inherently racist, is what most people look at and find disgusting. This idea that just because of your makeup, just because of your genetics, something that you had nothing to control, that you are immediately of low worth here. If you want to speak about someone's moral character here, I mean, if you want to speak about someone's intellect, which is one thing in of itself, which I think tends to happen. I mean, people tend to do this. You find a lot of the Ku Klux Klan members, a lot of other racists tend to say this towards black people. In fact, back in the old days, this is the general argument that would be made against black people, that they were intellectually inferior, that they even have the scientific evidence to represent this, that they had this part of their brain that just did not have the sophistication, the intellect of a white man, and they actually had all this science in order to support that. Now, granted, that's wrong. It's false. We know better now. I mean, you find that nature, if anyone has studied psychology, they realize that nature has a huge impact on your development, more so than any genetic component. And granted, there are obviously genetic differences between men and women, people of all races for that matter, without a shadow of a doubt. Yes, black people are physiologically, generally speaking, different to white people in many areas, but it's very difficult to prove, particularly when you're looking at something as subtle as intellectual capacity. I mean, granted, we can make clear distinctions between musculature, fast twitch fiber muscles, that kind of stuff. The sheer fact that you find in the 100 meters, for instance, that's generally been dominated by people of the West African diaspora. For the last how many decades, they're always in the finals. Like high 95% of people within the 100-meter finals, they're always from the West African diaspora. Has to do with their makeup, the genetic makeup. But if you want to start making that argument on an intellectual capacity, well, you'll have a hard time proving that argument. And more importantly, there is still a distinction between making the intellectual argument than to making the argument that someone's moral worth is inferior purely because of the makeup of their skin, that they have no soul, they have no enlightenment, that their wisdom, their ability to express compassion is limited because of the color of their skin, which is the very argument that Nick Cannon is making, which is the argument that I find to be detestable and built of their own imagination.
Comes with soul that we call it soul. We soul brothers and sisters.
Yeah,
that's the melanin.
No, you actually find the idea of soul music comes from the days where African Americans would be working on the plantation. Obviously, this is the evolution of gospel music. This was intertwined with obviously their African ancestry. As they would be singing the church hymns, the church songs, they would infuse this with their tribal musical ideas. This would become infused in their music. Over time, you find gospel music through fusion with other forms of music. I believe soul came about from gospel, also rock, but through these infusions, this is how you come up with soul music. The kind of music that is infused with the spirit of God. Soul, as in spiritual music, has nothing to do with your melanation, bro, but that's a nice try. Got to give that to you.
So the people that don't have it are a little, and I'm gonna say this carefully.
Yeah, you better say this carefully because your career is on the line, brother.
Are a little less, and where the term actually comes from, because I'm bringing it all the way back around to Minnesota.
I like this. It's not that white people are inferior; they're just a little less inferior. They just lack that soul, that melanation that just makes them a bit more aggressive. We're just a little more. I mean, I got to say this correctly because I don't want to offend anyone. It's not that you're inferior; you're just a little.
Farrakhan, to where they may not have the compassion or the when they were sent to the mountains of Caucasus.
I love that. He's being so diplomatic and so political with his arguments. Like, it's not like, I'm not saying that all white people don't have it. It's just they may not have it because they're not as melanated, What does that mean? The black people automatically have it, but white people can't have soul and they're not compassionate. I mean, what is the objective statement here? Well, let me speak for you very clearly. You're saying, Nick Cannon, that white people are less likely to have soul, to have compassion, purely because of the color of their skin, which ties to their ancestry. I'm pretty sure that is, by definition, textbook racism. And I love his face. It's like, how do I say this? How do I say this in a way where I won't be called a racist? Well, you can't really do that, bro. And you can't play the black card here. And I'm sorry, social justice warriors, but everyone is capable of being racist. Don't be playing this black card thing on me. I don't play that stuff. Don't give me extra rights. Don't give me extra consideration. Don't be playing this black privilege, white privilege game with me. If we're all equal, we are all endowed with unalienable rights, and we all have the same moral worth. We're just making that assumption here. Then you don't get some kind of extra privilege just because of something that apparently your ancestors did hundreds of years ago.
When they didn't have the power of the sun, that the sun then started to deteriorate them. So then they're
I love how he's describing this. It's like, I've heard this, and like I got to find a way of expressing this and making it sound like somewhat legitimate, even though I know even as I'm saying it, it's kind of crazy. But because I'm saying this to a brother, and this is generally what happens. This is like locker room talk. You can say crazy stuff when you're around people you kind of feel are on the same wavelength as you. I do this as well. I say crazy stuff, but more often than not, I'm joking. But the thing is, I'm pretty sure Nick is not joking here. He's actually being very, very serious, and he's speaking to not just a brother, but someone that obviously supports these racist ideas. The brother over here is notorious for having anti-Semitic views. So it makes it easier to disseminate views that are anti-Semitic when you're speaking in anti-Semitic or anti-white company. I mean, this is just something that happens, right? It's easy to speak about stuff to your friends when you know they're on the same page as you. This is one of the reasons, and this is to kind of support Nick Cannon here. This is to support him because I feel like he feels very comfortable saying this kind of stuff. This is not the kind of stuff he would say if he was in a public audience, if he was on MTV, because he realizes that this kind of stuff is very off-field. However, he feels a bit comfortable because he's with his brother here.
Out of fear, they're acting out of low self-esteem, they're acting out of a deficiency. So they're
white people are deficient. They're acting out of low self-esteem. It's a good thing I like Nick Cannon so much. I mean, this is not a good thing, that I might be able to forgive this. It's really hard to, though, because I'll be honest with you, as much as I'm smiling right now, this kind of talk is disgusting to me. It annoys me because it is a real thing that I know many people espouse. This is an idea that is perpetuated by a lot of brothers, and they'll always try to come across as being diplomatic. I'm just trying to be factual over here. It's not that I hate the white man. I just realize that there are distinctions between us. I mean, they do not have the necessary melanation in order to take in the energy of the sun, that is God, that allows us to be who we are, to have soul. The white man does not have this, and I recognize this, and that is just being real. That is all I got to say about that, brother. You know, I ain't a racist, obviously. I mean, I can't be racist because I'm black. Know what it is. Yeah, but hey, I just see, I'm a real motherfucker. I just say what it is. Yeah. No, bro, you're a racist.
The only way that they can act is evil. The only way they have to rob, steal, rape, kill, and
fight or flight,
in order to survive.
Exactly.
So then these people.
I mean, just imagine this. Imagine a white guy saying this kind of shit. And this is I've never seen a white. Maybe I was just brought up in the wrong era. I've never been able to experience someone openly, utterly express these ideas. Because there's light racism, you know. Like, it's like, man, you know what? Man, black people, you guys have big dicks. So, man, you guys are gangster, you know. It's like, you know how people always make assumptions about you? And look, I don't have a problem with that. That's an assumption. It could be wrong. But when you're making this, you're saying this, that at the very core of who you are, that you have these characteristics. Not that you are likely to be. We all make judgments about people. You can't separate the human psychology from that. It's called having judgment. Sometimes we're right, sometimes we're wrong. You see someone in the street and you make judgments about them. Oh, this guy looks shady. Oh, it's because he's got his pants kind of like down, and he's walking around with, like, he looks like a gangbanger. Hey, you make certain judgments on that person. Very different to believing that someone, just because of the color of their skin, just on that alone, makes them of less moral worth, which is what Nick Cannon here is perpetuating. And look, maybe he does believe this. He's speaking about this. I mean, you judge for yourself. Do you think he's joking around, or do you think he's being honest? And I'm saying this because I've experienced people that make this argument in the same kind of tone, in the same kind of manner, in the same kind of trying to be logical and rational. Or this, hey man, I ain't a hater, but it is what it is. Without a doubt. And I'm the last person to call anyone racist. Everyone's always getting angry at me usually because I'm like, man, that's not racist. I'm always defending people that are apparently racist, and I don't care that much about it. But when I see it, and it's actually been stated definitively by that person, I don't have to make any assumptions. I call it what it is. And I don't play this race card that everyone else does. It's like, nah, man, he can't be racist. He's black. And it's like, no, that's absolutely, at least by the definition that I like to use when you think someone is inherently of less moral worth or less worth because of the color of their skin, regardless of if you're black and white. That's what I call racism.
Who didn't have what we had. And when I say we, I speak of the melanated people.
Right.
They had to be savages. They had to be barbaric. Because they're in these Nordic mountains. They're in these rough, torrential environments. So they're acting as animals.
Right.
So they're the ones that are actually closer to animals. They're the ones that are actually the true savages.
I fucking love that. I love that. So essentially, get rid of this here. Essentially, he's making the argument that because white people are brought up in this Nordic environment, in these cold climates where they didn't have the sun, they had to survive in harsh conditions, kill each other, it's phylogenetic programming. Essentially what that means is these traits have been passed on to their sons and daughters, and white people have inherited this, and it's part of who they are. They're just more animalistic. They're more likely to be violent. But even if we accepted this idea, because look, there is truth to the fact that we definitely take on traits of our ancestors. I mean, there are certain proclivities that human beings have that have been influenced by our DNA, no doubt. But I believe that your consciousness, your will, your environment actually has a greater impact on determining the kind of person you become. The circumstances of your birth is not that relevant. It's what you do with your life that determines who you are. Yeah, I know I dropped some powerful truth bombs. But here's the thing that you got to realize. If you have a look at black history, it's not this history where black people have been these noble and majestic people that have only perpetuated goodness and light. No, you had people that killed, raped, that enslaved entire nations, like the North Africans enslaving the Slavic people. They were the original gangsters, man. We can go to West Africa, my part of the hood, the Ashanti Empire, over 1,000 years of slavery. We can have a look at the horrible things people have been doing to each other. We only need to go to places like Rwanda, where the Hutsi and the Tutsi basically killed each other, but with slight physical differences, even though they still share the same pigmentation. You find within parts of Africa there were wars going on between people that were darker, but not darker than some others. So it's not this black, or whereas most people just kind of see black people as black and brown. They're different shades, and these shades have wars amongst each other. People will always find justifications to hate each other, war over something. If they're not warring over this color of their skin, they're warring over the people with big lips and people with big small noses, things like that, like the Hutsi and the Tutsi would do. Subtle differences. It's not this clear history of black people being good people, only treating others with love and compassion. Oh, all history. Have a look at. I love how black people, proud black people, often like to do this thing where they paint black history as this beacon of civilization where there's been no evil, and it's always the white man, the Europeans, the smelly, dirty Europeans that have done all this evil. Here's the truth for you, and I will debate you tooth and nail over this. People, period, regardless of their culture, regardless of their race, have been complicit in doing horrible things. Period. Through time, through the beginning of time. And if you don't understand that, you haven't read enough history. And the problem is people tend to read stuff with this bias where they want to perpetuate, they want to think about their people as being benevolent, And this is the problem of race. People get caught up in this idea that my team is so important that I only need to take in information that perpetuates my team. And I can't hear anything contrary to that. And this is how you end up with people like Nick Cannon spewing this racist bullshit, because in their minds they've adopted this idea that their race, their people is superior. And as a result, they couldn't possibly be capable of doing bad stuff. But all the problems that you're seeing around you are due to people that are just not like you physiologically, which is kind of crazy. So look, granted, Nick Cannon has apparently apologized. Let me see if I can get rid of this over here. Yeah, so as I was saying, Nick Cannon has actually apologized by making some comments in regards to his disgusting statements on his podcast. He says, I heard an entire community, and it pained me to my core. I thought it couldn't get any worse. Then I watched my own community turn on me and call me a sellout for apologizing. Good night, enjoy Earth. Your own community. Well, that's even more disconcerting, because if your own community is saying that you shouldn't have apologized, that's kind of disgusting. And the funny thing about this entire incident wasn't so much that he said racist things about white people. It was the fact that he was he made racist comments about the Semitic people, about the Jews. Because it's one thing. It's funny how we live in a society where being racist towards white people is almost kind of just, white people generally don't get that offended, but white people tend to lose their minds from my experience. But you say racist stuff about Jewish people, and the fact that Jewish people have already experienced this in their history. They've seen situations where people have tried to brand them as being evil and so forth, economically strangling the community, all the arguments that Hitler would made, and they saw this Jew hate rise into a Holocaust. They're very weary of seeing this stuff happen again. The fact that we're already in this situation where there's this downfall, this economic mayhem going on, and people are starting to point towards the Jews. I think a lot of the Jews are weary of this, and they're saying, we can't be having this go on again. We gotta do something about this. And the fact that Nick Cannon was making arguments, stupid arguments, in regards to Semitic people. He went on to say that apparently black people are the real Semitic people, the real Semites. And look, therefore he couldn't have been possibly a racist or anti-Semitic person, right? Because you can't be anti-Semitic if you're anti-Semitic, if you were Semitic yourself, for that matter. And it's this crazy rationale that I find black people tend to do when the same idea of reverse racism, that you can't be racist because, hey, racism only applies, you change the definition, only applies to people that are don't have any power, and black people have always been in the position of position of minority, not having any power. But it's this crazy mental gymnastics that allows you to make arguments like that you can't be anti-Semitic because, man, your people are the Semites. And look, I'm not even interested in exploring his rationale for that, but bottom line is it was a racist and anti-Semitic argument, and I'm actually glad that he's been called out on this. And I think his last comment here was, like he's leaving planet Earth, he's out. Like this stuff is, what does he say here? Y'all can have this planet. I'm out. It's too much for him. Well, I'm glad, bro. I mean, look, bottom line is we need entertainers like Nick Cannon. He's a fascinating guy. But what we do not need is racism, that kind of stuff, you know. And I think this situation was handled really well by Viacom. From my understanding, they gave him the opportunity to apologize. First time around, Nick Cannon did not want to apologize. Yeah, they fired his ass. They have fired his ass. And I'm glad. I think this is how this kind of stuff should be handled. I'm sick of seeing these double standards where white people get victimized for saying stuff that is gross, is racist. But black people get away with it. How about having some double standards here? Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, let me know what you think. Let me know if you agreed with my comments. Let me know if you hated them. If reverse racism is actually a thing and black people can't really be racist. Let me know if you agree that Nick Cannon should be fired. Give us a thumbs up or thumbs down. Pay this forward. Peace out. Keep it real. Don't drive and text. This is your Chocolate Nubian Soul Brother.
What is liberty?
What the? Who says you can't build muscle on a vegan diet?
What's it like being a hottie in the vegan community? Are vegan guys better?
Yeah. Yes.
The economics of the system don't allow multiple competing systems to survive.
Engineering, technology, these arts of humanity, they are magic.